My name is Oren Hallett, and I'm a PhD candidate here at Carleton in Canadian Studies. And I'm happy to have all of you guys out to this Career Corner session on, what's it called? Masters and PhDs in the Government of Canada. And so we have here a panel that's going to talk about the sort of intricacies of government work, how to get in, the different programs that are available to graduate students, and to give you a sense of what the work is like when you do get there. So I think to start off, what I'll do is I'll just let each presenter introduce themselves and tell you a bit about themselves and where they're at right now.
I'll start.
No, go ahead.
I'll start. I'm Mark Sean. I work at Industry Canada in the auto sector division. So we're very busy and still are very busy, but we're in a bit of a lull right now, so I was able to sneak out. And unfortunately, I'm going to apologize in advance. This little auto sector restructuring has given me a bit of a flu, and so I'm not at my best at the moment. So that doesn't mean that public policy will suffer, hopefully. My background is I have a BA in political science and peace and conflict studies. And we're now joined by our final colleague.
Illustrious and mysterious colleague.
Fantastic. So I have a BA in political science and peace and conflict studies from the University of Waterloo, and then I went overseas to do my grad work. So I did my MPhil in comparative social policy on experiences of welfare reform in Manitoba and Ontario in the mid to late 1990s, and then continued on to do my DPhil on the sort of policy process and the mapping of the various factors that influence policy change around welfare reform in that same period of time in those same provinces. And then thankfully and luckily was recruited through the same program that I've now run for the last couple of years with a strong team of volunteers called the Recruitment of Policy Leaders program. And so we'll talk a little bit about that in a little bit, but I'll just continue to tell you a little bit about myself, I guess. So I was recruited in 2005, and I entered government in 2006. I deferred slightly to be able to finish my PhD, although technically that won't actually finish until I defend in a week, well, 2 weeks. So I commiserate with some of you in terms of where you're at in your process. And I was recruited into the Department of Human Resources and Skills Development Canada. One of the little challenges of government was that I was originally recruited by Social Development Canada, and then was actually had a letter of offer from Human Resources and Social Development Canada, and then up until a couple of weeks ago worked for Human Resources and Skills Development Canada. So there are some fun changes that occur in government that you get to experience through the process of being a part of the policy-making process. Primarily, I was recruited to work on pensions issues, and I've worked on pensions now for the last 3 years, trying to formulate a sort of dynamic and futuristic policy for the Canadian retirement income system. I would say my transition from academia was generally positive. That is definitely a different change of pace. I was lucky enough to work in a group that was very, very collegial and had a lot of great opportunities to be able to work with colleagues who'd been experienced in the government for a long time. One of the benefits of coming in through the Recruitment of Policy Leaders program is that you get placed at the mid to senior level. And so I was coming in actually with beyond the entry level as some of my colleagues had. And I think there's a natural tendency to think that must mean that the people who are in the government who are at those same levels as you must just either not be ambitious or achievers, when in fact it just means that they're really, really dedicated policy minds. And so I was able to benefit from their significant amount of expertise as I worked over the last 3 years on some policy making. I would say also about my transition that my writing style had to change. That was a fairly significant piece. It got a lot shorter. Part of the reason my PhD took an additional 3 years to finish was that I had to cut 65,000 words from it, which took a little bit of time. But on the most part, I feel like the same sort of analytical tools that I was able to utilize in my graduate work came in very handy when I moved into government. And I've found that the government opportunities that I've had have been extremely thought-provoking, interesting, and have kept me very, very much animated. So as I say, I worked on pensions. When we started on pensions 3 years ago, the group that I had just joined was only in existence for about 3 months. 6 months, I guess. And it was an attempt by HRSDC to be able to carve out a place for a retirement income system policy that was separate from the traditional understanding of our programs, so the Canada Pension Plan and Old Age Security and the Guaranteed Income Supplement. And so we weren't on the map at all 3 years ago, and over 3 years I've been able to get to a point where the file was hot and interesting and active, and it was very clear to decision makers that there was something here. Now, whether or not we end up doing anything about it is a totally separate question. But in fact, it was fascinating to be able to move towards and see the evolution of that file and be part of it. And then I quickly jumped over to Industry Canada 2 weeks ago, where I've advised on pension and labour issues. And was actually able to be part of the successful negotiation of the CAW-GM deal last week, which was pretty exhilarating. Some very, very long nights and some significant amounts of heavy slogging. But I'd say there's very few places in the world where you can be able to go from a PhD that seems quite theoretical to being able to actually put into practice some of the thinking that you've done and be part of a real shift and a real change in the way in which either an industry or a social program or the people of Canada sort of interact with their government. So that's a little bit about me.